Hey friend, it's Graham here from recordingrevolution.com. Keeping with the theme the last couple of weeks of my top plugins, my favorite go-to plugins, one of the biggest questions I get all the time, Graham, what are your favorite plugins? And while I don't love to say these are the best and these are the only ones you can use because let's be honest, you can use just about anything. The last couple of weeks I've been trying to show you my favorite top 3 plugins on some key elements of the mix. We talked about vocals, we talked about the mix bus, and this week we're talking about guitar. So I'm going to share my top 3 guitar plugins. Again, just a quick disclaimer. These are not sponsored videos. I don't get paid anything. I'm just literally doing these because you guys have asked for them and you've been enjoying them. And these are just, I've used a lot of plugins on guitar, let's say, for this video over the past 15, 16 years. But these are the ones I've been using a lot in the last 2 years straight, just to give you a sense of what I've been using as my go-tos. So I'm going to show you the plugins, my top 3 plugin settings, and give you a little, taste of what I'm using them for. But again, you can use any plugin that you like. And as you'll see, I'll show you my favorite 3 for guitar, but I will give you some ideas of what is going on in these plugins so you can find alternatives if you don't have these or don't like these options. Here is a song that I did with, again, my good friend Ill Factor. Love this guy. He's super talented, makes me look good. And it's called Thief. And here's a little taste of when the heavy guitars come in here after the low-key bridge. So those are the guitars in solo, which is never as exciting as, as the guitars with the whole band, with the super thick bass and the drums and the synths, and that's kind of the point. They're not as cool individually as they are together. But let me play you this little section where these 3 guitars are in. There's a left and a right sort of overdriven guitars doing the main progression, and then there's the sort of syncopated 1-note octave guitar. And I'll take away the plugins. You can hear what they sounded like raw on recording day, and then I'll walk you through the 3 plugins that are my go-tos, not just on this mix, but in general, I'm reaching for these on just about every mix with guitars. Okay, that's them raw. And let's break them down. Both of these left and right guitars are using the same plugins, so it'll be easy to show, but just these 2 by themselves. These were played direct through one of my IK multimedia interfaces and using Amplitude. So I'm using a virtual amp just plugged in direct. And there's a cool video I showed actually playing these guitar parts. I'll link to that here if you want to go see the interface and see the plugins that I was playing around with, playing with this unit. It's pretty cool. So I'll link to that here. But that's the sound I pulled out raw. And what I found, like with virtual amps, I find, and even with, and let's be honest, I'm recording virtual amps all the time. Usually it's my Avid 11 rack. But if I know it's a virtual amp, I'm going to start with a virtual tape or virtual tube plugin. And in this case, I'm using Stephen Slate's virtual tube collection, Slate Digital. And I really love the London tube. You've seen this before. This really is, it's a dark sounding, round sounding tube saturation plugin, which can add some character to a track. So it's just the guitar on the left. I've just got the saturation dialed up halfway. And I'm using the preamp. You can use the console setting, but using the preamp setting, I don't know how much it'll change. And then the push mode is more aggressive, but I left it in normal. And take a listen to what this is doing. It's very subtle. A little bit of gain. but it sounds a little bit more aggressive, right? It sounds a little bit more like it's come to life. So I really love what this guy does. So any kind of tape saturation plugin, Waves has some, Stephen Slate's got a good one, Virtual Tape Machines, which I use also. If you use tape saturation, use maybe 15 IPs because it's going to give it a little bit of a darker character. It's not as bright, not as modern, but in a way, that's good because a lot of guitar tracks are a little too sizzly, especially virtual amp tracks, a little too sizzly on the top end. So you can roll off some of that top end musically with a darker saturation or darker analog style plugin, which is better for the guitar in the mix because it gives it its own space. It leaves the high end, the ultra high end for the vocals and the cymbals and the high pads and synths, and allows the guitar to kind of be a more muted, more rounded off tone. So I like that. I start with that. And then I'm using good old faithful, the Waves SSL E channel. You've seen this before. This is one of my go-tos. I use this on everything, primarily on guitars. I'm just using it for the EQ. I'm not using it for compression a lot of times or anything else. So if you'll notice, I'm using the high-pass filter to start. I'm rolling everything up below 158. So around 150 is what I'm rolling off. That's going to get rid of a lot of that low-end thump, which sounds cool in solo, but it's just too muddy with synths and bass and kick drum. So I'm rolling that off. And then you see I'm also rolling off top end. I'm using the low pass filter to roll off everything above 11.5K, again, to try to help with that rolling off the ultra highs so it's not taking up that space. And then I'm using just these two middle ones. This is a technique I use called Complementary EQ Carving, where I find a sweet spot on the guitar on the left, and I've done tons of videos on this. In this case, I thought it sounded great at 1K, so I'm boosting it by 6 dB at 1K. And the guitar on the right, I found sounded really cool at 2K. And so I'm cutting 2K on the left guitar to leave room for the 2K on the right guitar. And you'll see that on the guitar on the right, it's the opposite. I'm cutting 6 dB of 1K and I'm boosting 6 dB of 2K. So what I'm getting is a 12 dB swing from the left guitar to the right guitar, which is giving them their own bit of separation. They're each getting to live a little bit more distinctly around their own mid-range frequency. I picked 1K for one, 2K for the other, and that allows you to notice the edges a bit more. So the same tube saturation plugin on the right guitar, same EQ on the right, same filters really, but only the opposite mid-range EQ. So what that gives you, if we'll get rid of this and we'll just look at these two guitars. I'll just bypass in one fell swoop all both plugins on the guitar on the left and the right. We'll start there. See how they're less bassy, they're more focused, a little more aggressive. These are nice, subtle things that can just make your guitar sound that much better and fit in the mix better. So I love Virtual Tube Collection from Stephen Slate, and I love the SSL E channel from Waves. It's just a go-to. I've been using this guy for probably a decade. And then, oh my gosh, one of my absolute favorite, and it's a sleeper, one of my absolute favorite plugins on guitar is a stock Pro Tools plugin called Fuzz Wah. And my goodness, this is one of the most underrated, most useful effects plugins, period. Because if you have layers of guitars and it is hard to get certain lead parts or even rhythm parts to cut through the mix and EQ is not doing it alone, if you want to get creative, this plugin gives you two things. It gives you a fuzz overdrive, which you can add some fuzzy frequencies, which can be good because it allows a cleaner guitar to maybe, or even an overdriven guitar, have a little bit more bite and you notice it a bit more. I'm not using the fuzz actually today. I'm just using the wah pedal. And it's exactly what you can imagine. It is a wah that you can pick which frequency, like how open the wah is, right? Really open or really closed. You can do all kinds of like filters on it, and then you can blend a mix knob of it, and you can even choose the tones themselves, the minimum frequency and the maximum frequency. You can choose which frequencies those are. There is so much you can do between the fuzz and the wah and mix knob on either of those, and then a mix knob on the whole thing. And then you can even put the fuzz after the wah or before the wah. This allows you to create all kinds of different sounds, whether they are very aggressive and obvious or very subtle. And this, I find, helps me allow the guitar to cut through in the mix. So I've got this sort of octave guitar here. And right now it's just going through a slap delay, which is cool. It's kind of making it sound a little farther back in slapping. But it's not cutting through the mix with all the stuff going on here. Right? You barely hear it before. Super cool. So now what I can do is, and again, I've got the blend at like 60%. I feel like this really gives it the tone I want. And what I might do is just turn the volume up a smidge. And I love how this sounds with the guitars together. And what you're doing is taking that guitar and giving it its own sonic frequency, its own space in the mid-range to live, and it really helps the whole mix come together. There you go. Those are my favorite three. We've got the Fuzz Wah that comes with Pro Tools. You've got the the Stephen Slate Virtual Tube Collection, which just adds that dark character to it. And then you finally got, let me get this over here. You finally got the SSL E channel, which just gives you that solid EQ. And again, you can use any EQ. You don't have to use the SSL. That's just the one I go to because I grew up learning on SSL. It makes sense to me and it's a good sound. But basic EQ will work, even your stock EQ. Any kind of filter plugin, but if you can get a wah plugin, it can do wonders to your guitar. Overdrive and fuzz is a nice bonus tool that you can sneak in there to allow your guitars to have cut through a little bit better in the mix. If you find that they don't come together on small speakers, you don't notice them on small speakers. I'll do this on the bass guitar sometimes, just put a little bit of fuzz so that you notice it more on small speakers. And then any kind of tube saturation or dark tape saturation or any kind of console emulation where it's darker and rounder can really roll off the ultra highs for your guitars, which gives them their own sonic space. There you go. Those are my top three. Let me ask you, what are your top three? Or maybe your go-to. Just pick one plugin that you can't mix without when it comes to your guitars. Leave a comment below and let us know. And then two, I want to help you out. I want to give you my 8-step mixing checklist. If you want to really not only get good guitar mixes, but you want your whole mix to come together. Guitars, vocals, drums, keys, mix bus, automation, the whole process, gain staging, how do you do it all to make sure you have a system from point A to point C to get you to the beginning and middle and end of your mix. I have a process. I don't just willy-nilly throw plugins up, and I think that's where a lot of newbie mixers are missing out. So I've put together my 8-step process into a really simple, guys, to read checklist. I want you to have it. It's an 8-step checklist. And I also want to give you a set of multi-tracks, stems from a song that you can download and practice this 8-step process with these tracks. So all of that is my gift to you. Just go to mixingchecklist.com, put the link here in the video, and it's below in the description. Just for hanging out with me and enjoying these videos, just download that guide and the stems at mixingchecklist.com and practice. I trust me. Having a process will help your mixes come together. Enjoy that. Let me know about your favorite guitar plugin below. Stay healthy, stay safe, my friend. I'll see you on another video real soon.